And we have 2 case studies, and that's really great that we are having also this kind of exchange and to learn from each other, which is a very, very important also fact of this training. So we are very much looking forward to these 2 presentations. The first will be presented by Angela from KfW, so explaining their roadmap and the projects, what they're doing with regards to biodiversity. And yeah, she has already a quick question for you, and I just hand over to you, Angela, and yeah, stage is yours, please.
Yes, hi. So I thought what would be interesting to see who of you has already a strategy or is working on it, is far away from this, or something else is going on. Just get a feeling from the room. So can't see. 11 are logged in. Has everybody already answered? So that means absolutely everybody, 80%.
11 have responded already, yes. 11 people have responded.
And yes. All say, yes, we have a biodiversity and a nature strategy. That's pretty amazing. So if we go one on, can we? No, we can't. Like maybe here. This is something, that's the second topic here. What is biodiversity mainstreaming in your understanding? If you can put it in a few words. Higher up. Restoration project, restoration, protection, importance. As we can see, mainstream is a very big story. It was a very big topic with many aspects to consider. So the reason I asked this, and kann ich jetzt da irgendwo drauf? Can I just press any old button? So we're going straight to this. So, because I was asked first to present on the biodiversity strategy of KfW, which I thought till yesterday was a story, but then I saw the headline, Mainstreaming Biodiversity in Public Development Banks. And this is when I realized in KfW is a very, very big banking group, and that's two issues indeed. Yeah? So I will first talk to you a bit about the strategy of KfW that we're working on right now, and then the attempts that we're making in financial cooperation to mainstream biodiversity. So KfW Group has this big KfW Plus. It's a transformation plan. As a transformation bank, is now making concerted effort to add to the very strong climate focus that we had in the past, also nature and the sustainability of our economy, because climate is, I think, it's basically mainstreamed. Climate is part of our work in every single part of the bank, but biodiversity in nature is something else. And so KfW initiated this so-called biosphere project. These are the quadrants of the transformation we are working on. Digitalization, for example, is one of them. Mobilizing private capital is another one, and then even climate and environment, part of this transformation. So, I don't know, I've now seen that all of you have strategies somehow, and we thought probably it would be a bit easier than it is to get consensus on this. So there is indeed IUCN responsible with the Marseille event, where we had very, very high level representation. So there was the KfW board members were there, and they met with Remy from GZ, they met with, I think, Mr. Oberle at the time from ICN and everywhere, and they saw this is really a topic, we need to look into this. And this is one of the things that we have already learned, you need push from very top. If you don't have it, you don't get nature into your portfolios. Then there was a scoping phase, and very long, and then there was a lot of counterwind actually. There was then a sensitivity assessment, a whole, what did they call, health check through the whole bank suddenly. Every time the team started thinking they would start now, and they were stopped again, and some assessment, is there really risk, is there, all the materiality issues that we're talking about, will this stop us from doing business, and so on. Till then, in April this year, again, it was represented, the approach to the board of KfW, and now they got the go-ahead, meaning that since June only this year, we are really actually working on this. So it's a strategy called Biosphere. This is playing on this concept of biosphere integrity. That's the one thing, and the SF in the middle stands for sustainable finance. So that's sort of bit our slogan. And we have committed to nature is sort of our claim. Actually, we wanted to first do harmony, banking in harmony with nature, just to kind of hang on to the CBD slogan, but that was too much expectation level, and but committed to nature isn't bad. It's quite a win that we're there. So it's a group-wide approach, and this means it covers all the banks under the umbrella of KfW, and they have very, very different business areas. So when we talk in our circles about KfW, what we always mean is a development bank. But if you have a strategy for a huge bank with very different business fields, you are talking very different story. And so this is now, everybody had to delegate people. It's a very big group of people. It's managed in an agile process. So we have sprints every 8 weeks. We get together, we perform in front of stakeholders, the Sustainable Finance Committee of the bank, and we say what we are doing. But our goal is to get the bank ready to recover biodiversity by 2030 in line with the GBD, to live in harmony with nature by 2050. Which is what everybody wants. And so we are supposed to have a strategy ready that will be functional on the 1st of January 2027. So this is our so-called strategy flower. So it's 6 working packages that I will not go into in detail because that's what I changed last night. I had that first ready. So it's what's our goals. So first we want to develop a biodiversity strategy, a qualitative one. Mind you, we were hoping that we would go out there, the expectation would be do 10% or 20% has to be nature or so, but this was already immediately no. But it says, okay, come with qualitative targets across the overall banking group. Again, that's a win in discussion to actually be told to do this for everybody and not just for the development bank. Because that was one of the arguments in the beginning very much, what do you want? You're already in the front, come on, this is great, let's do more of this. However, financial cooperation is almost exclusively financed out of grant when it comes to the green sector, and as we all know, we need much more capital mobilized if we want to rescue our beloved nature. So another aspect of the strategy flower is the development of a methodology for classification of nature positive and nature mainstreaming finance. Like, what is this actually? Yeah. That is also not a given. And identification of lighthouse projects, especially for mobilizing private capital. Those two is Lydia, who many of you know, and I are working on that particular aspect. I'll talk a bit more about it later. So then there's a very big risk component. Again, there is the struggle. Do we actually have risk? Is there risk really? Depending on what system you use to screen your portfolios, you have more or you have less risk, and right now they're more inclined to say we have less risk from a failing nature. So that's a struggle we are having. Then we have a reassessment and further development of our exclusion list, what won't we finance in the future, and our impact assessment process and anything to reduce potential negative impacts. We have a big package on data need. There's a lot of data we might need to buy, and we're trying to figure out which are those, which do we have, which do we need to acquire from outside. So we're talking to a lot of data providers. And then there is also a lot of effort in outreach and in participation and in, like we, for example, just publicized a position paper on biodiversity, which is in the internet in 2 languages and things like that to get, we call this Operation Backwind. So we get some wind into our sails from outside. So positive impact. So that's one of the strategy flowers here. So we have, as I said, just already quite a lot of biodiversity projects, especially in development bank. And but we need further financing and opportunities for the future, for all business units, and for this we need a business case. We've talked about this before. There has to be some profit to be made. And so we need to find cases where you can actually earn money with it, or else it stays in the grant corner of things. And we believe really that given her size, KfW has the potential to give significant impulses to the market. We think we can do that if we manage to turn that tank a little bit, just a little bit. Every little bit will make a difference. And so our goal is bending up the curve for identifying and mainstreaming opportunities for each of the business units. We are currently working on definitions, or kinds of definitions, like what is actually nature positive and so on. I mean, you can spend a lot of time trying to get to the bottom what it is. A methodology, as I said, and We are looking for lighthouses, which means we are looking for what have we got on offer that we can put in the window. That's the one thing. In-house. So that's what we're doing right now. We're screening, but we've also started screening peers and peer ideas. We're going around looking for what are others doing and trying to build them up as examples for our, well, within the bank. And show, look, this can be done, this can be done, you know, and we want to run this through the methodology that we develop also to see that it's really solid in terms of what we're saying about it. And especially, we're looking for private capital mobilization. Here, just a glimpse on the methodology. Maybe many of you know this one. This would be the World Bank methodology to define nature finance. You've probably all seen this. This is, at the moment, the closest contender about what we think we might get use in the bank to assess whether something is nature positive or nature mainstreaming finance. This is not, I'm not going to go into this, but this is currently the one that's closest to what we are looking for. Here, lighthouses. So actually, in the end, what we want is to extend the financing activities with positive impact on nature. That's what we're looking for. That's the goal overall. And we're looking for examples we can scale. We're looking for examples that have a mobilized market and private finance, and that we can publicize and that we can make a mood with. So I said that. And we're looking for concept and ideas. For example, like CDC has a very interesting approach on, what was it? It was nature positive indicators, some stuff like that. We want to work all those things up and make them accessible, to make it easier to see what's out there. It's not rocket science. So starting position, where are we right now? So there's the Financial Corporation and the DEG, which would be sort of like Proparco and AfD, sort of if you compare it to the French. So this is not a complete list, it's just what's going on already. Over 800 protected areas in more than 60 countries and regions worldwide between the two of them. In the domestic bank, for example, which is actually the real tank in the KfW group, they're sort of in the region of 100 to 120 billion euros of new loans every year. I mean, that's a number, so one can't really, when one never hears about it, it's all quiet, you know, they're doing all the municipal finance, all the nature protection, all the solar panel finance and so on. And so they have actually quite interesting nature climate action for municipalities and much related finance. Then there's EPEX, that's our export arm. They have green loans, sustainability linked loans, and so on. Our financial markets team have started anchoring biodiversity in green bonds. They've actually started now in biodiversity bond framework now last year. So also this is very interesting for us. And then there's a venture capital arm that also has, not exclusive, but funds that invest in that have aspects of nature and regeneration components. So we're looking at all of this. It's quite a search. This is just an overview. These are on the first look, and sorry, it's still in German because I thought I'm not going to go through. Every unit has different business models. No one size fits all. There is a profit motive in most of them, and when you say to them, can you not shape it more like this or like that, and they say, well, then we lose the bid. We're bidding for our projects, you know, on the market. We're competing. So if it gets more expensive for the client, we're out. You know, so this is the kinds of things we have to all factor into, giving them suggestions how to change their approach or how to alter their approach to integrate nature more. Development bank starting position. Here you see, currently we have a volume of 4.5 billion euros of really green projects going on, biodiversity projects. Out of these 367 projects, only 27 have a market finance. That's 17%. Market finance means, in this context, it means somebody is borrowing money from us and will give it back. All the rest is grant. There is a very interesting portfolio of funds, business funds and so on, and those are really curious because they pull in they work with market funding and they pull in private sector, but it is still an emerging sort of business within the KfW Development Bank. And now the financial cooperation, then it gets, we're very, very serious people, and we're doing everything really, really thoroughly. So what's happening? We are trying to account for nature positive through a process I will tell. We're trying to integrate biodiversity deeper and deeper into our environment and climate assessment processes, and we try to develop our portfolio. Here, this is accounting for nature positive in financial cooperation. We're dealing with probably half of you also with the OECD DAC method about biodiversity impacts. If you want, we can go through it, but basically what happens if we have BTR2, that's what we want. We want that would be accounted for when we do our statistics about how much nature finance do we do. BTR2 projects are 100% counted, and BTR1, which is where biodiversity is an important secondary objective, is counted as 40%. So when we do our statistics, how much nature finance we do, that would be the logic we're applying in financial cooperation at the moment. And we do not count avoidance or compensation of negative effects. That's very important. That's screened out. That doesn't count. So integrating deeper and deeper. So there are a lot of guidelines. Our BMZ, which is the Ministry of Development, you might know Germany has I think the last country left in the world that has its own standalone development cooperation ministry. We have that. They are the ones that are giving the financial cooperation, the guidance on how to go about. They're giving us the goals on our KPOs. So they have asked that we integrate biodiversity assessments much deeper into our environmental and climate assessments. We're trying to also do a lot of, so the colleagues working on very deep sector, how would you say that, guidance notes, so that you can look what can you do for specifically here for finance, energy, water, and mobility. And then we're trying to push for nature-based solution. We are very interested to replace some of our grey infrastructure approaches. Last one, a biodiversity portfolio development. Also here, there's guidelines what biodiversity markers you can maybe integrate into a water project, what you can integrate into NBS. There are guidelines, 2 are ready, water and NBS, and 4 are being in preparation for rural development, financial and energy and mobility, to make it easier for colleagues when they're thinking about their log frame. What could it be? How could I push? And that's the kind of guidance they're trying to give them. And that's it. Yeah, for now.
Thank you so much. So, looking around, are there any questions from your side to Angela's presentation? Or comments, appreciation, I don't know. Yes, Moko.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Angela. We are also in the process of developing an integrated biodiversity strategy within the bank. We have a draft, but it hasn't been finalized yet. It hasn't been approved by the board. So I think it would be good just to have a high-level discussion with you and to see what we're missing and what we can incorporate into ours. I don't know if yours has been approved already and if you are implementing already, but I think that would be quite insightful to have that discussion, yes. And actually, Julie, who I hope will talk later, is the custodian of that strategy, so it would be helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, totally agree. Exchange is so important and learning from each other, yeah.
Yes, and thank you for the presentation. And I think it's a huge thing to have one strategy for all the entities of the group. It's not easy. The targets, they are also the same for every entity, or do you have declined, this is an overall strategy, and then FW Corporation has its own sub-strategy, or how does it work?
That's a very good question, and I'd almost be tempted to answer that evasively, because indeed in financial cooperation we get a lot of targets from our BMZ, no? And they have now said 25% of climate finance must be nature positive somehow, you know, have a nature positive effect somehow. 12% of your portfolio has to be nature or biodiversity investments. This is absolutely no way our hell freezes over that we get anybody in the overall bank to agree to something like that. That's why they set qualitative targets. So what we're still, I mean, we are in the process of this planning a strategy, so we expect that there will always be sort of a special ambition level for the financial cooperation. Yeah.
And you have different targets between grant projects and loans? Because you said that only, I think, 17% of the biodiversity projects, I think, are loans. The rest is grants. Are the target different, or how? No.
They're the same, and they're the same. That makes it very complicated, but we've realized that, so we include, for example, policy-based lending in that, if it's purely focused on nature, so that helps a lot. That's very big projects. And then we have quite a few of the sort of very big countries, like the BRIC countries and so on. If you work with them, there you can actually do, like we just did a huge commercial loan in financial cooperation with China for reforestation. So such kind of things are in there, but they're all under the same, they have the same KPIs, so the same as any grant project.
Yeah, maybe, thank you very much, Angela. Maybe two questions on my side. The first one is considering the extension of the exclusion list, have you already drive this this thought and already have some minds of what will be added there? And the second is, you have highlighting the need for purchasing a lot of data. So are you referring to data metrics such as the one we investigated yesterday, or are you contemplating other things?
The exclusion list. Okay, so the exclusion list is a panic maker in a bank, you can imagine. So, in internal discussions, we're actually thinking things like, and this is internal and totally forbidden to say, I'm just saying it in the secrecy of this room, that we, for example, feel that contemplating filters for coal-powered plants or so back into our list and things like that. We do thinking open into both direction, but an exclusion list is a huge political debate. It will probably get an extra session with the board, just what's happening there. Yeah, exclusion lists are really, because the minute you say we're losing business, then all doors shut, and then so we need to do this very cleverly, and it's work in progress. We're starting, and they're thinking about it. The other thing about the data, no, I mean, from what I know, I find that very complex. I mean, I admitted to being very confused in my introduction at the beginning. One of the reasons is these meetings where we sit with data providers like Bloomberg or so, and then they tell us what they've got and what do you need, and this costs so and so much. And I don't even know what I need them for yet, really. So there is one person who has 4 or 5 consultants with them. We all have big consultants groups supporting us from behind, but get organized, that's not easy. And so everybody's advising, so I think the dust hasn't quite settled yet on what we're going to buy and what we actually need it for. Yeah. The furthest developed are the people working with negative impact, because this environmental impact assessment and all this is a very established process, and they know how to go further and what else they need. Like, I know they've bought a lot of geolocation data from some provider, maybe even European Space, I'm not sure, but they have bought to go more in detail, where are we actually investing? So that I know they've done, but the rest we're really in process. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, Angela. This is very impressive work that you have already done. I think one of the greatest challenges of mainstreaming is to convince people that sectors that wouldn't think about this at first, to commit to these targets and to to apply to their operations, because I believe that by doing this, you reduce at first the kind of operation that they can support, and then after that you change your portfolio and you add up new things, but there's a moment that they get a bit lost. I want to know if you face this challenge, how it was for you.
Absolute. I mean, it's a bit sounding a bit dramatic, but we were close to revolution. It's specifically inside the financial corporation when there was a story about, we do already have like a so-called climate app where you have to go in and check and do lots of assessments. Everybody does that. And I said, and we will now do this for biodiversity. And there was like, no way, not another paper. I mean, people are really adamant they don't want any more work. So that's already in the way of thinking about it. So that's why the colleagues now working on this, they have taken the approach one by one, very easy guidance, little brown bag lunches explaining what you can do. And there are things like, for me, for example, my heart beats higher when the energy, solar energy guys come and say, you know what, we've noticed there are so many more biotopes develop, such unexpected biotopes developing underneath these big solar plants that are all cancelled off, and so no predators get in. And all of a sudden we've seen, like for example in India, these things are hundreds of hectares big. And you get real biotope in there and bird populations. And so now they're doing a study to see, can we make this as part of all big solar projects? You know, simple guidance how to do this. So you actually create biotopes while you do something else that generates income, revenue. This is also our hope, to be able to give this kind of message on and make it easy for people to think about and maybe even integrate it into their project. So that's the kind of positive part, yeah. But you're right, it's hard. Yeah.
Yes. Maybe one additional question on the investment on measuring and monitoring the impacts of biodiversity projects, if there are discussions related to that, because we know that this is like here we can see most criteria before the project is done and what we can advance and the strategies for new projects. But we know that there is something that there is a problem at the end that is measuring the impacts, and it's harder when it's a biodiversity and a nature project. So what are the discussions?
So here I am here on my weak leg, and I hope to learn something about it this week. But you know, I think in designing here there was a little bit of mistake in the sense that everybody had learned from climate, and that you have greenhouse gas emissions, and that's that, and you need to sequester those. Yeah, biodiversity is a very different talk. And there's so much debate, and I thought that was also in Abu Dhabi and the conference, and also now in Helsinki. It was everybody's looking, what is a good way of doing this without overburdening the process? I don't have your answer. I hope I understand that better in the next few months.
Here's another one.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I have a question regarding the protected areas. You are financing 800 protected areas around the world. So how do you work with protected area managers? Or maybe what are your main partnership around this topic?
Trust funds were kind of like, we're in the board and we set the guidelines, but they go out and do it. So the Legacy Landscape Fund, the Blue Action Fund, I think these kind of, there's a forestry action facility now in, so that's one approach. The other approach is like direct investment in protected areas, and yes, it's very, I mean, we always work, KfW is a bank, so we always hire A, consultant set, and B, they hire local. I mean, there's a lot of local interaction working with local stakeholders. And there is now a ramping up of the, First Nations and IPLC, get them in there, into the management, in the design. But mostly, of course, we start at intergovernmental negotiations. So we don't say, oh, we want to do a park over there. It doesn't work like that. So the government will come to us, or will be suggested to come to us, or to BMZ, then they discuss, we want to do something here, how do we want to do it, and then a project is developed, and they take that very seriously, that there's a local demand and local approach. So it's a very big question, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Angela. We have to look a bit of a time because we still have Julie also in the room. So thank you so much. I think this was a very good presentation, and thank you for that. And I think the discussion is not stopping right now, right? Because I think we still have 3 more days or 3.5 more days to go. So any question you might have to Angela, how they're doing it, what their approaches is. You just heard already the first connection, DBSA, KfW, to learn from each other will be set up. So this is very good and also like a good outcome. So, but we also would like to learn a bit about the journey from DBSA. And Julie, I hope you'll be here with us. It took a bit longer. I hope you're still here with us.
Yes, I'm right here. I just needed to share my screen. It's so nice to be here, and it's such an honor to be here. I have a long journey, and IDFC has really helped DBSA. In fact, that's slide number 1. Couldn't do it without our friends. And this one particularly puts IDFC first in how it's helped. And one of the partners was the AFD that has super helped DBSA. Then a whole lot of others that I'm not going to go into, but what we have learned in our journey is we were really ashamed in so many ways of where we were at in trying to conquer the same barriers that the previous speakers just mentioned. And we humbly declared where we were at with TNFD. And then they said to us, but you're the most ahead in the whole world. And we thought we were most behind in the whole world. So then I learned that DBSA is advanced in some ways and backwards in other ways, and all banks are the same. We all have our niches where we are particularly broken barriers or bottlenecks. But the slide that really tells the story most is this slide down here, or this little picture down here, if you can see my marker. As an infrastructure bank, DBSA invests heavily in engineering infrastructure, and the direct impacts of nature are often covered in EIAs and EMPs, but not adequately, but semi-adequately. But the real story lies in the dependencies on nature, and that's what's underfunded and under-recognized and appreciated in the EIA process and in the financial value chain process. So rebuilding how we see finance flows to include the dependencies of nature and to mainstream that into infrastructure projects is where we can probably have the most profound difference to make. Because somehow or other, in the way things evolved, we removed ourselves from nature in just looking at the finance and the feasibilities of engineering projects alone. So when it comes to the ground, we are very well covered with EIAs, EMPs, ECOs, LTAs, and you name it, we've got it. But really the impact of this isn't much. So this is where I asked AI to draw me a picture and just to illustrate what's wrong with this approach that a lot of the banks have adopted. It's good for measuring direct impacts. It's very poor for measuring the link between what we're doing and the nature that's dependent on it. And that's why we're not really touching the left side of the map in how we manage our finance flows. Obviously, the global biodiversity, the GBF, I've even forgotten what it's called now, the global biodiversity framework really, really helped us with saying this is the way businesses do things, particularly in banks. And then we had a lot of steps that the other banks followed. We've gone through, I did the first biodiversity strategy for DBSA more than 10 years ago. And it wasn't allowed to go through management because it had to wait for climate. Then we did a strategy for climate and biodiversity. And then we were told, take the biodiversity out. It's enough just to get the the board to agree on climate. And that biodiversity strategy is now 10 years old, and every year it's updated and never approved because we're still waiting for whatever needs to be done in climate before we can move on. Or we're waiting for umbrella strategies and they go out of date, and then we've got to go through the cycle again before we can even get back to getting an approved biodiversity strategy. So I loved what KFW was saying. We've also learned, and we learned a lot from AFD as well. Don't worry if you can't get that strategy formalized, still do it, still write it, you've got it. But also you can start doing things like roadmaps. They don't have the same political weight. And you can also do things like biodiversity toolkits and all the other things that were mentioned. And then there's this convergence, but we can't wait for the convergence of disclosure frameworks. They will help us a little bit, but they are so lagging behind. Great whilst they're rising, great when they arrive, but not going to be sufficient. In the meantime, TNFD just hit the ground running and has been a major force and driver of change and very useful to DBSA. The other thing that's really helped DBSA, again mentioned previously, is get your whole organization to understand what is nature positive, what do you mean by it, and there's various ways to explain it. And I loved, and I put into my presentation, the KFW thing, bending the curve. Oh yes, that's just a lovely phrase to use, so I'll adopt it going forward. But now if you look at this helps explain to people what is meant by, is it nature positive or isn't it nature positive, and how is it, and what tools do we need to really capture that and do that, and showing people the difference between what is an offset. These days very little can be offset, it's more compensated, and then added value over and above doing damage control and over and above compensating. That is really additional conservation value add, but that too is now old hat. What is required over and above that is transformative change. And how are we using every investment we are making as an excuse to help an organization with transformative change? And obviously, have they got a nature transformative change strategy and policy? If they haven't, how can you help them? Even if you yourself as a bank don't have it formalized. Then I loved also the expression of the previous speakers. I put it in there, lighthouses, because I don't want to forget that. So I'm learning all the time with every presentation we attend, and that's how really DBSA has matured in its outlook, because every time, like Mocho and I have got the opportunity now to hear from all of you in the room, we are capturing what we're hearing, and we are carrying on building our strategy and our action plan and our direction and our pathway based on what everybody is sharing with us, and it's a never-ending and changing story. So this is really important to say, what changes are you aiming at? What are the drivers that you're going to influence, and how can you quantify it or qualify it in terms of the dimensions of biodiversity? It's just a helpful guidance tool again. Mocho also suggested that I give you some examples of the type of things DBSA did. So this is example one, where we took an infrastructure investment project and we looked at an opportunity on how we could invest in biodiversity over and above compensation, offsets, nature positive, all of that, but actually be transformative. Fortunately, in this particular municipality, which was Durban or eThekwini, they had a transformative approach already to climate and nature. And so we worked with communities in one particular little catchment. This was for an aqueduct, incidentally, one of the biggest engineering infrastructure projects ever seen in this country at a municipal level. And so we worked with environmental champs these are very poor communities, looking at how they could monitor the river system from all kinds of points of view and feed into the municipality that information and get a rapid response from them, just develop a partnership. And it worked so brilliantly and so beautifully. And it also ended up by saving 400 households, that's many more than 400 people's lives, when the floods did come down this particular catchment and wiped out an informal settlement in a flash flood at 1 o'clock in the morning. And that's another story to say how a simple engineering project that looked for an opportunity for transformative change demonstrated a great impact that could happen. And as a result of this and similar work done by eThekwini, there's now a lot of money. The whole country is going to go this route of working with these Enviro champs. So it just had a profound impact across the country. One success story, one lighthouse. So the other lighthouse is working with Sanbi at a more policy level. Here it wasn't this previous one was a loan. This one was now leveraging grant money for for policy work at a national level, trying to capture the problems on how offsets were viewed in the country, how water resource management was viewed, how it linked to infrastructure investment. And we worked for 7 years with a whole forum of members from various different government departments, private sector, universities, and so on, communities, to try and rethink the value of ecological infrastructure. And here's a map showing one of the outputs was the strategic water resource areas of the country. And now from that map, much work can flow. So the leverage of this particular program was enormous. But one thing to point out was a lot of map work was undertaken under one of the components, mapping ecosystems, mapping their value in the catchments of the country. And that really led to where I'm going next. So remember that map, but that map is just one of many complex maps. That was just a simple one of simplifying it. But from that, we also have been working with outcome-based funding models with private banks, looking at what's the role of development bank versus a private bank, and supporting the private banks to develop outcome-based funding models by supporting them where it mattered most in the initial early phases. Then also looking at how to create biodiversity credits, because this links a lot to infrastructure. And so we worked with a Western Cape government, that's Cape Town, and we helped them to look at, when do you do nature contributions, which is, I want to be nature positive apart from what I'm busy investing in. And when do you use compensation, as in it's a requirement, it's a legal requirement, a safeguard requirement, and also maybe I as a infrastructure investor or a developer just want to be nature positive. So just breaking it down into different cases and then looking at a particular example where we could help the Western Cape, where the red areas in the map signify very important nature areas that haven't yet been destroyed. The green signify the protected areas, and the white where development has taken full hold. So from this, the Western Cape government could draw an offset policy, and the red could become an offset bank. They're banking potential areas for offsets in the future, but they're doing it before the offsets come on stream. But not just the offsets. That's for one part of it, so that they can give permits and licenses and authorizations. But the other part of it, for anybody anywhere in the world who wants to save this highly valued plant kingdom called fynbos, the fynbos kingdom, so that now through biodiversity credits people can invest. And then we have organizations that we are now trying to work out ways of where we are heading is doing. In the past we did a lot of landscapes and livelihoods initiatives, but it was difficult to do these. But now we're working with organizations that like WWF or Conservation Africa or South Africa that have done a lot of work in this field, and we're doing our own biodiversity fund and facility, and the driving champion is sitting in the room with you, and that is Moho, who can tell you more. But from those examples and lighthouses, we have a policy statement or a position statement. Thanks to IDFC, it catapulted us and biodiversity, because once our CEO had signed it, it became formalized. And that's a very powerful tool, more powerful than if we tried from the bottom to get it advanced to board level. And then the technicalities was explained by the previous speaker, that it's not carbon emissions and carbon offsets, it's much more complicated. So explaining to people and simplifying it is a part that we love as the sustainability unit. Then we touched on the Encore tool. So Moho also asked if I could just pull this in, because you were learning about it yesterday. So we did a cheat sheet. So what we did, we took the main sectors that we are involved with, and we took what were the drivers of environmental change, what were the natural capital assets, and what were the ecosystem services on which these particular sectors highly depended on. Now that we had that, we simplified the whole of the Encore sheet or tool into one sheet, and that just gave people a kickstart into understanding what we were trying to do. And then we could explain and analyze our loan book and show management how 1/3 of all our loan book was just dependent on 3 main ecosystem services from a couple of natural capital assets, and these were the drivers of deterioration of those assets. And then we could go to credit risk, and we could say to our credit risk team that they could look at risk a little bit more differently, take into consideration what outside stakeholders were trying to explain to us and their expectations, and we could start to change our credit risk models in the bank. And we did, and we won, and it was a magnificent success story. But then we changed managers several times, and in the changing of managers, we lost the very thing we had won, and it all went out of the credit risk model mysteriously. And now to put it back in is taking even more years than it took previously. So that's just to tell you these things are a cycle, and when you win a victory, you have to protect your victory. That was a hard lesson learned. And then the AFD did a study of the banks in South Africa. They did a study of all the economies of South Africa and how it overlapped with social and nature, came up with some interesting stuff. And from that, we drew our own thing that our own management could understand, taking into account all the ecosystem services and what we invest in, and a heat map to show, once again, using Encore, 5 years later from the previous round, how most of our loan book is dependent on the water sector and why. And just a little map like that was super powerful. People don't want details. They don't need very elaborate papers. You have to have them at the background, but to present, they just need, this is the message, and this is what's going to happen to our bank if we don't take seriously these ecosystem services. Which leads us on to the next great tool in the box, which was the TNFD, which really was so well done and so helpful because we couldn't afford consultants. So we just had to do it in-house, and we didn't have in-house time or capacity. We had to do it after hours. We didn't even have after hours. We did it after hours. But it was so clearly laid out. It really helped us and made it possible for people in the bank with no time to actually get to grips with what was required and to start building a strategy and advancing a roadmap. Because we just call everything now roadmap and toolbox, because that's how we get it all approved, because it doesn't threaten anyone else's turf. So the material risk prioritization was all in TNFD, the kind of metrics architecture for transition planning, well advanced, very helpful in terms of trying to identify key indicators. But what management really want, what they really need is, they're asking, so how much of our loan book is vulnerable to water scarcity or flooding? And they only ask these questions after the flood or when the drought is extreme. So when the whole of KZN was underwater and everything that was infrastructure was flooded and destroyed, management said, we want, this is the board, we want to know how much of our loan book is at risk in KZN. And the ESG unit, well, now it's called sustainability unit, had long done that. It was just sitting there, never been shown to board. So they said to us, go back, and by the next board meeting, we want this on the table. And we could just tell them, just relax. We've got it all already. In fact, it's not just the flooding risk. We can tell you water quality risk. We can tell you reputational risk. We can tell you regulatory risk. We can tell you physical risk. We can tell it to you for Africa. We can tell it to you for Cape Town or eThekwini. We can give you the whole thing. You just have to tell us which sector, which place, how much do you want to know. We've got it all at a click of a button. And why did we have it all at a click of a button? It was because we were using WWF's water and biodiversity risk filter, and we had already mapped all of this already, and it's magic especially for South Africa. And now I go back to my points. When I said we had invested in nature data in that SAMBI project, remember right at the beginning when I said to you, watch the space of this map. SAMBI had done very detailed maps especially for South Africa, but later for SADC. And those maps were now put into the water risk filter. And because they're detailed, they are truly meaningful. And from that, we could map all our risks. We could say to the bank, so everywhere there's a dot, that's a project and an investment. And now you can see where the risks are really, really serious. And we could do this for any one of these things. We could aggregate it into this particular map shows DBSA's loan book on physical risk of water. But we could do it for biodiversity. We could do it for flooding. We could break it down into subcategories and sectors, whatever they wanted. We just did it at a click of a button. But more than that, why this WWF water risk filter is so beautiful is because it can show the correlationships. It can show management that where we're working in a water scarce environment, conflict is rife, and therefore media scrutiny and reputational risk becomes very important. So we wouldn't go into an area where there's water scarcity and start supporting an industry that is taking away water from basic human rights that are yet to be resolved, because that is going to exacerbate conflict and reputational risk. And we could show it all. This is our loan book now shown in that language. So this is language that strategists love, and they can't talk this language unless they have some scientific base on which to talk it. And now we could present it to them on a plate. How powerful is that for a strategist in the bank? Also, the economists in the bank, economists think in language that is scenario based. So you can't go to an economic model and say, have you integrated nature? Because they will just go cross-eyed when they look back at you and they'll say, well, show me the data. Now we could do that because WWF's water risk filter does exactly that. It looks at the business as usual scenario versus pessimistic and optimistic. So suddenly we could start integrating and talking economic language. So now the units in the bank dealing with economics could relate. And again, I'm bringing in the issue of the lighthouses. When we've got all of this kind of way of presenting data, you can start saying, these are our high-risk clients, these are our high-risk sectors. These are our very green and helpful, partnerships, client sectors. And this is us, where we are just totally inadequate or where we are strong. So we're looking at where everybody is strong and weak. And we're recognizing that everybody is integrated, A, because we're borrowing and loaning money, B, because these guys are supported by these guys, often their corporate social responsibility. And these guys are providing lighthouses for these guys. So we are all integrated and we're all in this mess together. So it's no point just focusing on green clients. One has to take the very dirtiest clients and make them green and help them with that transition, because then you have a very powerful impact. And you can't help them with that transition unless you have a partnership that's showing an alternative, innovative way of doing things, because that can have a huge and profound impact on policy level and on how companies respond to an environment. And then after we've done all of that, it comes back to, so what tools were in our toolbox that we really need in order to get to there? And what tools can we chuck out? And these were our favorite tools, and in different stages. The green, we were doing it really well. The brown, we needed more information, or we needed approval from management on. So we were now looking at our toolbox, not just blindly following what other banks are doing, but what did management need that was missing here that these tools or other tools could help? And how did these tools get us to the metrics to prove our case? And then how did it help feed the instruments we wanted to launch or to advance or to scale up? And that meant we had to go back to ourselves as our unit, as our sustainability unit, and say, so what's our tool when we analyze a project? And again, I love that, bending the curve, a little bit more and going deeper into transition finance on nature. So what kind of tools do we have? And this is where IDFC truly helped the bank with a couple of talks that we went to on training on how to do taxonomy for nature, and where AFD came in with their beautiful marker tool, and we had slightly adapted and adopted their marker tool. And then we did a whole toolbox, which I'd love to show you if I have time when I'm finished. But once you've got that and it's analyzed per project, Now you can build these kind of metrics, which can lead you into confidence when you start giving the actual percentages or the numbers or the rands and cents, the qualitative targets that nobody wants you to say or state. But even if they're just in-house, it's better than nothing. What you say externally obviously mustn't be so weak that it's meaningless, or so strong that you're not going to achieve it and embarrass the bank. But you can start, once you get confidence in this, you can get confidence in this. And if confidence is what you need to do it, then build the confidence. If ambition is what you need, I know some banks are just ambitious and they set these targets. And I know the AFD CEO said to me, we set it and we had no idea how on earth we were going to achieve it. No idea. But because we had said it and announced it publicly, we made jolly sure we achieved it. And actually, that stuck in my brain a lot. Then the FSD through Anchor, I think you'll know the British Development Fund, they came up with a fantastic benchmarking tool where we could analyze where we at, where we want to be in terms of a whole lot of criteria, and then compare us with other banks who had done the same tool. It was such a great tool because it set the stage for our management to know where are we lagging, where are we advancing, and going for the weakest link in the chain. So that helped give us guidance for a really nice, positive roadmap for nature. And this is it here. So from that, we could get into all of this. We could name the unit. We could say what they had done, what they were going to do. This is now the lead unit, not all units are doing all of this, but various units like credit risk is leading credit risk models. The climate finance unit is leading climate finance, green climate finance, that green block. We've all got our different roles to play, and this says the timing. Do we have the resources or not? What stage are we at? What have we achieved? What are we going to achieve? And that's why I'm saying that often this is more valuable than a strategy, a formalized strategy. Although we did get a biodiversity strategy incorporated into an overall DBSA sustainability strategy, which comprises climate, biodiversity, and other components, human rights. So we have got a hook of biodiversity on which to hang all of this on. So it's there in the umbrella strategies, and then the roadmap takes it deeper down. And then the transition framework is really what we've done as well, with the help of great guidance from TNFD. And that's also, again, more than a strategy, because that's really the framework on which the roadmap is based. Telling management what's our strategic ambition, our framing and scope, and our business model, and where we are today now is where we can announce to the world confidently that this is how we see ourselves as a boldly transformative, biodiversity, positive, driving bank. We're not there, but we want to get there as quickly as we can, and we're mobilizing every aspect that we can, bearing in mind that we still face the same battlefields of, so many other things have to be done first before biodiversity will be seen on an agenda. But building biodiversity into priority agendas helps us get biodiversity through, and then getting these roadmaps and getting these transition frameworks. These are not threats to anybody, but they demonstrate and illustrate the amazing things that many people are doing in the bank. It's not just the sustainability unit. Every unit in the bank wants to be in on this, and wants to show that the great things that they're achieving, and wants to show the things they still need to do, and wants support for that. And it shows us where we can combine forces, or where we need to just let one unit ride with it because they've got a good handle on it and they're going for it, and they feed back to the greater whole and the greater collective good. So that's really where we're at. And so thank you so much for listening.
Big applause here in the room. Thank you so much, Julie. Amazing presentation, and I think very interesting path you have taken, or journey you have taken. We have heard already earlier, okay, look at the experience from DBSA, but also listening for myself the first time was really impressive. So thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. Very appreciated. So looking around, are there any questions from the colleagues here in the room?
Hi, Julie. This is Emmanuel from AFD. Thank you so much for your presentation and your enthusiasm to present it. Just something I didn't catch really. It's why have I understood well on the fact that the bank is prioritizing right now the climate, and therefore you've done all that impressive work on nature, but for the moment you are still waiting for the top management of the bank to let you introduce and mainstream all you've done once they have achieved, or when they have provided them the green light on climate. Is it what's pending on you, or I wasn't sure of the next steps for you?
I think that the lesson learned in this is to always drive biodiversity and climate together. Whenever you're doing a strategy or a policy, try and drive them both together. Never allow a bank to say, let's do climate first, because that's more than a board can cope with or more than we've got resources for. Just to do them both together, because if you do them both together, they will happen. I mean, originally we did a biodiversity strategy and a climate strategy, and then we were told, no, let's just go with the climate. So then we combined it with climate and biodiversity, and we were told, this was 10 years ago, just take out the biodiversity and just go with the climate first, and let's just do that. And then the climate was called a policy framework. It wasn't called a strategy. So then we were told, okay, now wait for it to become a strategy. And then then we kept changing management. So every time it goes back, it flips back again, and it keeps flipping back. But I think my advice to any DFI is obviously you do need the umbrella strategy, because you can't drive a climate change strategy or a biodiversity strategy without an umbrella sustainable development strategy. And DBSA had got that, but every time there's a change of management, they want a new strategy, which I can understand, and then that delays going into sector-specific strategies like climate or biodiversity. So once that's done, that's a 2-year cycle. So it just sets you back into another 2-year cycle. So I just think the way to drive this, based on DBSA's lesson learned, is just always go for a sustainable development strategy, but simultaneously at least allow the other strategies and roadmaps to be put on the table and taken through the system as well. And if they can't, then go for toolkits and roadmaps, because those don't require the same level of sort of scrutiny at a political level. They don't somehow other raise concerns as much, even though they say the same thing. It's just the name that it's called. And that's what I've learned. And yeah, I think, I don't know why it's like that. I just think ESG and sustainability teams are very thin on the ground, incredibly under-resourced, incredibly overloaded with current crisis management, and board calls for something and the very thin team is trying to do that and achieve that, and these things just don't get to the top of the agenda because of that. So I think that's really why, and eventually they do come and they do surface. But the climate strategy has been revised 3 times, whilst biodiversity's been waiting for it to be completed and undertaken. And now that we've got an umbrella strategy that deals with climate and biodiversity and human rights and circular economy and all of that stuff, now it's easier to push anything in biodiversity through the system than it was before. But that's just a recent thing that's happened.
Thank you. Looking in the room, any other last question? We have to better look of time. Yes, Laura.
Yes, Laura from AFD here. So yes, thank you very much for this presentation. I think you said several times that DBSA learned a lot with IDFC and also AFD. But I think you learned and improved some of the tools that we are still fighting to use inside AFD. So it's really impressive. My question was you talked about the credit risk and taking into account, I think it was climate into the risk of credit. If I understood right, I'm not sure if you could go back to this. It's like you take it, and then now it's not taken into account anymore. But you said that I think for pricing the projects, at once you have nature or climate incorporate. I'm not sure if. Because this is impressive. In AFD, we still don't have it. So, how did you manage to do what was? Yes, how climate was taken into account to price the loans?
So our credit risk has got a model, and it says these are the factors and these are the percentages that it will vary the pricing of a project based on. And so we made sure that one of those items was nature dependencies. And therefore, every single project was viewed from, is there a nature dependency risk? And that was how we built it in. Then we have other credit risk models, at different levels of the organization, where it's more not so much calculations based, but more framework based of things to consider, and we built it into that too. So that was how we did it, and it was very simple. I mean, once it's a line item that affects pricing, it's taken very seriously. So that's where we put it in. But I wanted to also just show you this, what we did here, which is the toolkit that we had for analysts, to make sure we're all singing off the same song sheet. So we looked at the aspects of how to mainstream how to force people into thinking more nature positive. This is the screening marker tool. If anybody wasn't sure what it is, you just go to that screening tool, and there it is. So you just go here, and then that explains it. Now the AFD will recognize a lot of their work in that one. And then and the value of going not just to nature is exactly this. I mean, if I just go back to the screening tool, AFD had done this for biodiversity, for human rights, for climate adaptation, mitigation. They'd done a screening tool for everything because they have a very bold sustainability policy. DBSA didn't for a long time have anything like that. But now we have a manager who's really been pushing that. So she's been really pushing the sustainability holistic framework to be much more robust. And because she's done that, we now can start using screening tools on all of them, and not just on biodiversity, because biodiversity was just speeding ahead of the others. But now she has forced the policy and the framework in place strong enough to allow far more than this. So that's why a lot of this is just waiting in the wings. But in the meantime, our team, our sustainability team, can get on with these tools and keep doing these things. So this tool just says to the analyst, now you've addressed the screening. Have you addressed the dependency issue? Have you done the encore tool? Have you done this? Have you done that? You don't know what it is? Go to it, and here it will give it to you. The mapping tool is very much IDFC. Thanks a lot to IDFC influence on have you got the criteria met? Have you got is it on the checklist? Are you saying it's a +1 -2 based on all of this, and so on? Have you done the water risk filter and the SANBI kit and the DEFI kit? So it guides you into what you need to do in order to complete it. Have you got clear terms and conditions? Have you got the right metrics? And that's our biodiversity tool. And I was actually hoping maybe the IDFC could do something like this for all banks. Instead of us all inventing our own tool, we have the IDFC help us to develop this tool. But obviously some things are continent specific, like South America won't have a vulnerability index done by CSIR. They'll have a vulnerability index done by somebody else. We have a green drop and blue drop that says how a wastewater treatment works, how appropriately is it being managed. Other countries won't have that, but where you've got that, it's hugely valuable. So we put in whatever's hugely valuable and critical to mainstreaming biodiversity into this one-page tool. And if analysts have completed this one-page tool and all the help they need, they want to know what the safeguards say, it's there. It's just to remind them. Everything is in this tool to take them through the whole process to the right metrics and the right conditions and the right monitoring to claim a nature positive project. Just as an example.
Okay. Thank you so much, Julie. Very much appreciate also for your sharing your insights and also the largest tools you're applying. So yeah, thank you everyone as well. Was there last question or no?
No, I was just saying it's amazing to work, and and then even you don't have a strategy, that you already have the tool, so it's a way of bypassing.
So I think
great.
Exactly. I think from our perspective, I think there's a lot of room for connecting bilaterally. I think in order to learn from each other, maybe in another setting. So I think this purpose was very good. Yeah, Angela, last comment from you.
Yes. Endorse this idea to IDFC to maybe think how they can develop a tool that both of us can use. It's great.
So one thing on the to-do list.
What's about it?
No, great. Okay, with that, I think we close the panel again. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you.
Say goodbye.
Cheers, everybody. Enjoy it.
We hear the applause and wish you a lovely afternoon.